You're listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers.
Presented by CMH Heli Skiing and Peak Performance.
The Low Pressure Podcast is sponsored by CMH Heli Skiing, where you can choose from 11 unique locations and experiences, including 4, 5, 6, and 7-day signature trips, the brand new single-day trips. You can do small groups with just you, 4 friends, and a guide, or the private and exclusive, where you get the whole place just to yourself. So find your next adventure at cmhheli.com. The Low Pressure Podcast is also sponsored by Peak Performance. There are many ways to make it down a mountain, but the best line is your line. And the adventure is there, so make it yours. Visit peakperformance.com and get the gear to unlock your free ride spirit. Dude, welcome back to the studio, to the house.
Thanks, dude.
I'm still in the same place, eh? People are still like, you still live here?
Yeah, pretty sick spot.
It's not bad, eh? Especially for Whistler, if you can hold on to something that works for a while, like the caretaker.
Classic Whistler suite.
Yeah, right. That's something you don't really get rid of. It's close to the hill, and you know.
Yeah, do you walk or drive?
So I drove for many years, just because I'm lazy. But POW days, get up, base 2, right? But
yeah,
what is it? I guess during COVID, I was like, I wonder what it actually is going to take me to, like, how long it would take. So I got this little skinny tire bike. Put all my gear up. I was like,
so quick.
I went to Hoji's Instagram to see how he set up his ski rack on his bike, and I gave him a call, and he's like, I'll use this, whatever, right? It's just
ski straps.
Yeah, volet straps. And I was at the hill, locked the bike up, put my boots on the gondola, 9 minutes.
Nice.
And I was like, why haven't I been doing this for...
Well, nowadays it takes longer to park than that, so...
Yeah.
It used to be different, but now parking is like probably the slowest procedure of the day going skiing.
Unless you're there at like 8:30 at the latest, you're screwed.
Yeah, I'd imagine if you bike from here, you're going to beat most of the people that are skiing down from Lot 8.
Yeah, right? So it's been pretty sweet. So I've been doing like a hashtag bike to ski whenever I do it, whenever I remember. And I'm trying to find trying to work out like a deal for like a fat tire bike. I don't necessarily need an e-bike because it's like right there, but the fat tire would be helpful because I got this like little skinny tire like road bike that I use. So I got to go out by the passive house, by the cross country trails. So I got to like walk it through there just because it sinks. Other than that, man, it's a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah, I bet.
I kind of wish I'd been doing it earlier. Have you ever ridden your bike in from Pemby?
Have I ridden it?
Yeah. To go skiing?
Not from Pemby.
Did you see?
No.
Do you know Peter Wojnar?
Yeah, I know Peter.
I think he just did like last week or a couple weeks ago. He did this Instagram story, and I was like, you rode your bike.
There's no snow right now, so it makes sense.
Yeah, but I'm like,
normally there's big snow banks, and it's quite dangerous biking in the winter on the highway.
Yeah, I wouldn't ride my bike on the highway in the summer, but.
Yeah, it's dangerous.
I was like, good for you, man.
He's also a hardcore biker and skier, so Peter'd be the guy to do it.
Some people just are built differently. It's like, I'm going to go and, like, why? It's just cause, right?
Yeah, Peter's nuts.
Because it's like a 25-minute drive. What's the bike, like an hour and a half?
I would think at least an hour and a half.
Right, with your skis and your boots.
Yeah. On
your pack, and then...
That's if you don't stop. It's I mean, what is it, like 35 kilometers?
Yeah, something like that. That's a bit much. Like
all uphill.
It took me 10 years to start riding my bike 9 minutes up the street, like the flat ground, right?
Yeah. No, I ride my bike to get around a lot in Pemby, but not to Whistler.
Yeah, it's smart. Because you're a commonsensical human being.
I don't know. Just a bit aggressive, I guess.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm stoked you're back, man. We chatted, I guess, at IF3 where you got to present part 4 of your Sacred Ground series, and I was like, yeah, I love it. Like I watched 2 of them this morning, and they're like, each one of them just blows you away. Like the quality of them. Like you've done 4. Like, let's talk about what the concept of Sacred Grounds is. Like, I wanted to, when I watched them, I'm like, I gotta get Kye in and talk to him about this.
Well, it's kind of sort of the same direction I've been, like a lot of my other stuff, has been.
Mm-hmm. Just highlighting this area, this part of the world, right?
Yeah, it's really like highlighting the sea to sky and the connection I have to like skiing this area essentially, and why it's so unique to me and special. And also I don't really have the opportunities to like go to the far reaches of the earth to ski all the time. So
Right.
why not like, make the most of what we have right here in our backyard.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense, right? It's because you know this place so intimately, right? You've been skiing it since you were a kid, and you've got, ski partners and mentors and like buddies, and like you've explored so much of this zone that
Yeah.
even if you're skiing a new line, you've got that like, I guess maybe sense of comfort of knowing that you're in this area. Like you could ski a line that's way gnarlier here than say somewhere in like, let's say like Georgia or like Europe or something. You know what I mean? But you'll probably feel more comfortable skiing that line here than that random one, because these are different mountains, different atmosphere, different. It's that weird thing that you can't really explain. Do you know what I mean?
well, I think if it's wherever you are, if it's Europe or Georgia or something like that, I've never been there, but you got to spend time in that place to understand the snowpack and the terrain and like
Right.
how it's changing and what it does. Here I'm like, I know like the prevailing wind directions and I can read the forecast better, and although it's like still probably one of the hardest places in the world to do that because we live on the coast right by the ocean, so
Right.
things still change rapidly.
Because it's like we had Alex Armstrong on, and she goes full on into the snow nerd stuff, and she's like, Squamish, Pemberton, and Whistler are an hour apart, but they're three distinct, very different snowpacks.
Well, it is and it isn't. We're in the sea to sky. It's all the same, but like the whole coast mountains are all the same in one sense, but like from one side of the coast to the other side it's different, and one side of the valley to the other it's different. Even
Right.
in Whistler, like from Blackcomb to Rainbow is two totally different things. It's just like, I was just in Hawaii for a week, and one side of the island is super wet and rainy and lush, and the other side's dry and rocky, and it's like 30 minutes apart.
Right.
It's the same here. Like you go over to Powder Mountain or Brandywine and it snows, fucking 60 centimeters there. Blackcomb's only going to get 30,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it changes everywhere. And the same with Pemberton, you go up like behind my house on the west side of the valley, and we'll get twice the snow that you get on the Tenkle side or
Right.
Birkenhead or whatever. So
it's just that lifetime of like knowing and just feeling. It's interesting too, because you can go and do all this snow study, and like say someone that's never been here before could go dig a pit, do a little like their scientific assessment, and be like, okay, based on this information, this is what I feel, or this is what I think. But someone like yourself, who's been here for 20, 30 something seasons, right? Without even being able to explain why what that is, after digging that same pit, you may have more knowledge, or just more of an intuition, I think is probably what I'm looking for.
probably, yeah, you can probably react a little quicker than like
Right.
someone that's doing what you're saying probably has to go, maybe dig all those snow pits. By the time they're done doing that, the day's over.
Yeah, right.
So like maybe if you're like from here, you might have a little more experience to like be there at the right time.
Right, and just like a lifetime of experience, knowing that okay, this is this is what this is. I'm familiar with what this is going to turn into, right?
There's patterns, but at the same
Yeah.
time, like with climate change and everything nowadays, like the patterns are changing too. So
Right.
it doesn't really get easier. It's only getting harder.
It's throwing another monkey wrench into the program. Like right
Yeah.
now, like do you ever remember a year where all of North America wasn't snowing, either in the east? Usually it's one or the other, but like it's wet everywhere.
Yeah, I can't really recall, but I also didn't really like pay attention too much to places I wasn't at.
Yeah, fair.
I definitely focused a lot more. It's already hard enough to like understand just our own local,
Right.
terrain.
Right, and which you do and you focus on, which is like you're a specialist in, which brings us to the Sacred Grounds film. So, like I said, I watched it today, and there's a lot of footage in there. Like each one of those, like looking at stuff that people put out today, there's a 10-minute edit or a 15-minute. You've put out over an hour between 4 segments, and you got a 5th one,
Yeah.
and it's like Kye Petersen quality. Like if I'm watching something of yours, I know what I'm gonna expect, right? It's gonna be some gnarly lines, some fast, like super technical skiing, and I'm just gonna be like, holy shit. It's one of those movies that either makes you want to go ski or makes you want to stop skiing because you're like, oh, I'm done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're all been a little different too, though, I'd say. But yeah, like, I mean, the first one was way different than the last one, I would say, you know?
Right.
The last one was more, or the fourth one was definitely more like those like once a year kind of lines, you know?
Right.
Where you're trying to get them.
That's the one that you did at, that we showed at IF3? Descendants, I think it was.
Yeah.
Not Descendants. What was it called?
Dissension.
Dissension. Pardon me. There's
it's
another
okay.
film. There's another Descendants film.
Okay. No, Dissension.
Because there's 4, right? There's Formation was the first one.
Formation, Connection, Migration, Dissension.
Right, and then kind of do a quick like summary of each of them and why.
Formation was the first one, and fuck, I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember too, because it's like, it's kind of,
It's been a long journey.
I focus on one at a time, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, that one was more like, it was, you know, the idea behind the word formation is like, you know, that's what, you know, this place is what formed who I am, you know?
Right.
So it's more of the type of skiing in that I'd say is way more well-rounded, you know? There was like everything from like big jump trick stuff to like natural mini golf trick stuff to like bigger lines and kind of all the types, and pillow skiing, kind of all the types of skiing I do.
Yeah.
You know? Where Connection, the second one, was definitely, that was the pillow one, you know?
Yeah.
It was all about like,
It's insane.
yeah, that was all about like the connection for me to our backyard, to seeking in our backyard, you know?
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, like it's a lot easier maybe in the backyard to find new terrain because you understand it.
Right.
But it's also harder because you've skied a lot of it, you know?
Yeah, it's like when you, like I was talking to someone about this, Andrew, who was on the episode a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And you know what, you like when you go somewhere, you see everything with a new eye and you see all the possibilities. Like if you're taking photos, you're like, if I go somewhere new, I'm taking photos.
Totally.
But if I'm here, like I don't see anything I want to take a picture of because I'm so familiar with it. I'm so used to it. Whereas if someone else came over and was standing next to me, like, oh, look at that, click, look at this, right? So it's just maybe like
Totally.
the way that you approach, or this the way you see things.
Totally.
Based on how new they are, how used to them you are, or like.
Yeah, and Connection was all about like kind of going around the next corner and finding those, like, they were kind of, I think almost all the zones we filmed were spots that like either me or some of my friends kind of discovered, you know, by just going around the next corner and seeing what's there. You know, you waste a lot of days doing that, but you also like, it's the only way you can find new stuff.
Those are some of the fun days too, right? You're like, oh, you know, we didn't really get anything out of it, like ski wise or shot wise, but you're like, well, look what we found though. Let's.
Totally. And I get bored of like, you know, doing the same thing season and, you know, in and out. So like for me, that was really about like, you know, keeping it fresh for me and finding the terrain that keeps me wanting to do it, or else I don't, you know. That being said, you know, the third one, Migration, is all about like that time where eventually there comes a time you leave the valley and you want to go find something else, you know. And we always go east every year, probably, you know, to the interior, or we fly to Japan or whatever. And that one was kind of what that was about, you know. I should say, actually, well, I think Connection we went to Japan, but Migration we went to Mica and Revi, so that's kind of the yearly migration. Even though last 2 years I haven't gone east, I've stayed on the coast, but yeah, that was kind of what that's all about. And then this next one that's going to be released soon is kind of going against what we were just talking about with the local areas and exploring here. Is like, although I get bored riding the same things every year and I want to find new terrain, there's something special about having that connection to those places you do go every year, you know. Like every year you wake up and go ski Spankies in the morning on a powder day or something. It doesn't really get old, you know.
Yeah, right. Like, I think about it all the time. Like, that's a great example. Spankies. Like, how many times have you skied that run?
But because you've skied it so many times, you have this intimate connection with every rock and feature that's in there.
And you can absolutely annihilate that run, right?
Yeah,
Top-
and
top
each
to bottom.
feature changes from every storm and every,
Right.
wind direction and whatever.
So you can, and it's, yeah, I was thinking about that sort of thing, that just the familiarity with like a slope or a run or a zone. Like even thinking about like bombing down a groomer, like whipping through like zigzag or something, every roller, every compression, exactly how, and you can like, if you're with someone else who's an excellent skier, you're going to be so far ahead of them if they're not comfortable with, like, I'll go to Kicking Horse or Revy or any other place, and I'm with people that are from there, and they rip down the groomers, and I'm like struggling to keep up and like trying to hold on off of like, a roller, trying to not to get bucked or something like that, just because you don't know it. It's that familiarity, which is like,
And it helps having that person, because then you get that like
right,
quick introduction to things you might have not found right away on your own too.
Yeah,
which is nice.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think about those like little minutia of like how things work all the time. I think you're kind of the same. Just looking at with what you explained, and correct me if I'm wrong, but with what you explained and how you set up kind of your films, even with Numinous, like there's always and actually even with your Instagram posts and whatnot, I was looking through them, I don't know, not long ago, and you seem to either put a lot of thought or a lot of time into what it is that you want to say or how you want to present those ideas.
I guess I don't think about it, but I do that because I just don't like try not to put any garbage out, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And maybe that's the wrong way of saying like, oh, you put a lot of thought into it. Like I didn't assume like you're writing on a script before you put it in, but you're just probably you seem like a thoughtful person, introspective person. That's just like, this is what I have to say, right? And it always seems like there's substance to it. It's not just like sundogs from my dogs or some shit, what I mean, or whatever.
And that comes down to, I guess, just me getting bored easily too. I'm always trying to like stay interested in things, whether it's like the gear I'm riding on, or the terrain we're finding or whatever. I'm always trying to like do something with it that's like changing and like evolving,
right?
What I'm doing.
Well, that's a good segue, because I wanted to talk to you about your Kye Skis project, right? So this is you'd worked with, I think, Rossignol and Forefront, and then you developed into you're working with Johnny Foon, who has Foon Skis, and you're like, all right, let's create this Kye Skis project. And I never really talked to you about it. And then, you can talk as much as you want or as little about it. But that was, along with what you explained, like, I'm bored. I always want to push things forward. I always want to, like you're a creative dude that needs to kind of have an outlet. Yeah. Well, that was a pretty cool outlet.
Yeah, it was a good, fun project.
Yeah, so how did that come together?
Kind of like what you said. Like, Johnny was doing something cool and wanted to do something with me. And then we sort of made it happen. Essentially, it was like an opportunity to do it, which later on down the road it was like ended up being something that was good while it lasted, but maybe not something that was gonna last forever, which is fine.
Right.
It was like a moment of like progression, and it basically allowed me to do something different so I could progress my skiing, I guess I would say.
Right.
The moment I did that, I think my skiing, I felt like it was an opportunity to like put something under my feet that was going to allow me to ski in a way I wanted to. Right. Which I hadn't skied before. So I think it just helped me with my skiing and progressing it. And then since that, I've been able to take that beyond now to working with like vocal, who I'm with now, and I've just taken, just like I did with Forefront,
Right. It's just a constant evolution of like what it is I like and how things work. And
totally. And with Rossignol, it was like the beginning of doing that, and then that wasn't enough. So going to Forefront, I was able to like, get more creative and evolve. And then
that was kind of like where you learned how to do all that stuff with like Forefront, right? Yeah. Being able to actually get in, like with Sturbin's allowing you to get in there and say like, well, what do you think about this?
Totally.
Actually get your hands on it.
And then even more with Kye Shapes, because I was like really had my hands in there,
Yeah, because you were like, you not only just were building skis, but you're like a business, right? That must have been like quite an overwhelming endeavor.
Totally. And the ski building too, because we were starting from nothing, we had to like learn how to make the best skis, like it wasn't right away. We built probably 30 versions before we were like, this is the one, you know?
Right.
And now going to someone like Vocal that has the capabilities of like, you know, overnight doing
Creating
that,
a prototype.
you know?
Yeah, right.
So they're you know, the Audi of the ski industry, you could say, if you look at like the car industry.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Like,
because they just had their 100th anniversary, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of knowledge that goes into 100 years of building skis.
big time.
Right.
Yeah.
So with that, like, was it just an opportunity that you had, and you're like, was it a light bulb moment, like, maybe I'm just gonna do this for myself, like I just want to figure this out?
For Vocal, you mean?
No, for Kye Shapes.
Yeah. It was kind of a light bulb moment, I guess. I had thought about it for sure, but
Yeah, just because you were like, there was something missing, or was like you said, you finally had the ski that you really wanted, because you know, you ski a lot different.
Well, I had a really good deal on the table with another brand, that would have been, you know, probably the biggest ski deal of my life, or it definitely would have been. But
Right.
the skis they were making and the skis they wanted to market with me weren't going to allow me to ski the way I wanted to.
Really?
And actually would have held me back a
Really?
little bit, you know?
Interesting.
So I was like, oh, like money and being held back, or like not money and being able to progress my skiing. And I've always been like way more interested in staying interested, you know? So
Yeah.
that's what allowed me to like, you know, keep doing it after 20 years, is like, and staying stoked on it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then the same now with Vocal, because it's like, you know, after all this time, it's just like another evolution, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So that's a pretty big move. That's a pretty big decision you got to make, right? You're like,
yeah, for
you're
sure.
looking at this check, and you're like, all right, well, this is going to pay a lot of that mortgage, and this is going to enable me to do this, and then, you know, this is also going to enable me to go to all of these places around the world, you know what I mean, and do all these things. But you're like,
Totally.
Like, how hard was that decision to make, or was it actually quite easy?
No, it was tough for sure.
What was that call like, where you're like, sorry, I can't do it?
Yeah, I feel bad for a few people for sure that were involved, but at the same time, like, they figured it out, you know?
Yeah.
They've signed other people since, and I don't feel bad for them, but it was tough for me because I was like, I could have done a lot of things that that I wasn't able to do.
Right. Just because you're now working, essentially, like, not only are you just not building a ski, but you're running a business, and you're in the shop, and you're learning about like materials and sourcing,
I'm not
and
getting
ordering
a ton of budget to like fly around the world and do all this stuff. So
right, and
which I want to do, but at the same time, that's not what's gonna evolve my skiing, you know, in my career, you know, and my personal brand. It's gonna help their brand for sure, but maybe not mine.
Yeah, fair enough. So how long did the Kye Skis project last? It was like 5 years, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, it was about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
When did you get to a point where you're like, all right, it's time to shut her down?
Well, COVID hit, and then like the investor we had pulled some shitty moves on us, and you know, we tried to keep going, but it was just and we could have, but it would have been not a smart move, basically.
Right.
You know, and then with the way things happened during COVID, and then this opportunity that came on the table, you know, I was already working with Marker a lot, you know.
Right.
So, and then Vocal was the one brand that had a ski already that I was like, if I'm not skiing on this ski, if I had to look at all the brands, you know,
that's the one.
That's the one.
What was it?
You know,
was it the 121?
Yeah, the Revolt 121's was a really solid ski, you know.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty easy decision, you know, at that point.
So if you could like tell someone like what you came away from, if you're able to sum it up into like a little package, what did you come away with from that experience? Because it was quite a thing, man. Like, you know, I saw like people like Blazer and Maddie were talking about it all the time. Blazer loves those skis. I think he's heartbroken that he can't get new ones every year.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely came away with knowing, for me, exactly what I need to ski at the top level, you know,
Really?
which was important for me, you know.
Really?
because it was an evolution for about 10 years, you know, coming from my pro models with Forefront to the last Kye Shapes ski.
Yeah.
To, you know, really basically fine tune a ski that's going to be the best all around ski for me.
Yeah. How did it like change or influence your like perception of like the ski industry like as a business or like behind the scenes? Like did you gain a lot of you would have gained a lot of information because now you're making a ski, so you got to learn you know about all of that back end stuff like that. We're just usually, you know, as athletes or as media people, we're just asking people for money, right, just so we can do what we do. But they're the ones that
you definitely understand how dealing with in the hard goods side of the industry is difficult. I guess when you're you know, get to know the whole sort of intricacies of every material and every, you know, thing that goes into it and the sales and all that stuff.
So do you feel like now that you've gone through that, I guess, crash course in like this education, are you able to like, do you approach your new contracts and your new business dealings with other brands in a different angle than maybe you did before?
A little bit, and I think I just understand it differently too.
Right.
Which maybe allows you to, you know, sort of speed up some of the process, I guess.
Yeah, cut through the junk. Be like, hey, let's not talk about this because this is not needed. We already know what this is all about. Let's get right to it. And
maybe not asking questions that you already know the answer to, you know.
Right, just to like see what they're gonna say, kind of thing.
Because you already know.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. Well, that's cool, and it was good to see that kind of develop. And I'm glad that you know, moving forward out the other side, like you're already set up for, you know, a lot.
Yeah,
because you were on Vocal last year. Was your first year with them?
Yeah, well, basically second season, but like kind of 1.5. So this will be like my this will be my third season at the end of this year.
Right. And was it also maybe kind of like a relief too?
Yeah.
Because now you can just focus on skiing again.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was still able to focus on skiing then, but it's a relief because I'm able to like maybe do a little more throughout the season. You know, I've got like more access to trips, and I'm still really, it's similar in a lot of ways. I'm really involved in the testing and developing process with them, and doing what I did with Kye Shapes is definitely beneficial for both parties, you know, I think in that aspect. So still really involved with that, but then also, you know, have more opportunities to go on different shoots and, you know, work on different projects and things like that. What
do you want to get out of your skiing now? Like, so like moving into this season, right? What are your goals? Do you want to do more like, because you've done these really, that's kind of like what you've done in the last 10 years is these big film projects, right? Usually self-driven, big, really impressive film projects. Like obviously Sacred Grounds is distributed by MSP. So if anybody wants to go watch that, just Google Sacred. You should watch them all. Like make a night of it. It's like all 4 of them together. It's like an hour long. Like
it's worth watching. And all back to back.
Yeah, you could easily put them together as like one film. Or were they all filmed in like why did you do it that way versus like one grandiose movie?
Budget reasons too. You know, I didn't have the budget to like make a full hour and 20-minute film. You know.
But you did though.
Yeah, but it's independently. So budgets come around. You know how it works. They don't. Comes around.
Oh, you're like, hey, I got a little bit of cash. We're gonna go do some shooting, and we're gonna put together a segment.
Yeah, and then some of it we already shot, but I didn't have the money to put it out
to edit it.
So,
okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of where that kind of comes down to. And then last year, you know, same thing. I've been working with like, you know, just scratching by with different little bits of budget. So this next one we're putting out is like a lot of it's still coming out of my own pocket, unfortunately, and a lot of that stuff did too. So. And I try not to do that, but I'm so passionate that I like still want to, you know?
Then you need to get it out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then this next one is like really only a couple days of ski filming, you know? So I just kind of do what I can and then wait till I can create it, you know, and put it out there. And
right.
Would have liked to put it out maybe even earlier in the fall, but it's just now it doesn't really matter to me anymore. It's like the whole season to me it's all the same. And
what do you mean?
Well, it's just not like it was when back in the day where you'd film all season long, like develop all the 16 millimeter footage, and then like go like maybe show up to a studio for a couple days, edit with somebody, and then it ends up in a movie like TGR or something like that, and
in
then,
October. Right.
In October, and then all the movies come out at the same time,
Right.
all the magazines come out at the same time. Nowadays, there's just media popping up 365 days a year.
It's overwhelming. It isn't quite special anymore, right? We had this like I have 3 conversation. Like you still get the big films that we'll do in the fall, but it's not as special anymore. And then we were talking about like the mountain bike industry, because we were talking about doing like I have 3 mountain bike, which we attempted, but they don't really have that season either. So it's like movie will come out here, movie will come out there. So there's no real schedule, no real calendar like it was. But I know what you mean, where it's like you can put out something in the fall and compete with everything that's new, and then maybe get drowned out by the noise. Maybe you put it out in, like you said, at the end of December or early January, where it has a bit more room to breathe. People are already skiing, so it's like
I don't know if it really matters anymore as much as it used to, at least. So people will maybe watch it, maybe won't, probably won't, because there's just too much out there nowadays. Like even myself, I watch a few things randomly throughout the year, but I don't like when I was a kid, you'd be like so fired up to wait till that season comes around when you can finally get your fix,
right.
Kids nowadays, they open their phone and they every minute of the day they can get that fix. Me and my buddies would be like, like you buy the Poor Boys movie, I'll get the Matchstick movie, and we'll go watch them at our houses.
Right.
Everyone sees everything nowadays, so it's
not really special anymore.
Yeah, it's not as special, I feel like. And I think it's just, people just see it all the time. And it's created like a lot of progression in ways too, where it's like, kids are, it's just the way it was, we'd see like the first Rodeo 7 ever done and you'd be like, oh my God. And nowadays it's like kids are seeing like, double cork freaking 1440s all day long.
This morning on Instagram, I just saw the first snowboard 2160.
Yeah.
And I was like, well.
So maybe that happens once in a while, but it's like in general, the progression is so all like, and you see it with like now it's flooded, the industry's so flooded. Like when we were younger, it was kind of like only a few guys were doing it. The sport was still, the new school side of skiing was still so new. And now it's like some really good skiers and snowboarders that are, some of the best in the world that are really not making a living off of it, because there's so many of them.
You look at your phone and you see some kid doing something like wild and you're like, who the hell is that guy? He's got like 2,000 followers. Like nobody knows he's just some random kid at the ski resort.
Or he's got freaking 100,000 followers, but he's still, or 50,000 followers, whatever it is, and he's still not making a ton of money because that, it's like.
And that's interesting because you've kind of you went through the whole transition, right? Because I remember when I think we were talking on the last episode, you'd been in the industry maybe about 10 years. That was about 8 years ago we did this. I can remember standing in the solar coaster chairlift line and seeing you in the lift line decked out in like a white with like red trim Oakley 2-piece suit, adjusting your shit and like just, looking sharp. We're like, oh, there's Kye, right on. You know what I mean? Because we knew who you were at that point. It was like 2 or 3 years into your career, and that's when the ski industry was good for skiers, right? You could make a living. You'd able to buy a house. A lot of look at a lot of the guys that came up that have places in Pemberton. And I use that as kind of like a benchmark.
Yeah,
Abma, Heimer, McIntosh, yourself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? These are guys that came up in that like early 2000s. Right when it was real good, right?
Yeah, and I was like a little late because I was younger, I was there for the whole time, but I wasn't like at my peak.
Right. I was
the up and comer.
Yeah. So
when everyone was making the big bucks, kind of,
Right, and kind of moving kind of into that, but not.
And then I guess got there. In my early 20s, I got there, and then right after I got there, the industry started kind of descending, where the money wasn't as much there.
Right.
But I was lucky, I still got a piece of that, and I was able to like make a career out of it,
Yeah, so like being able to be there and then seeing where it's gone now, like you were able to watch the whole kind of
arc.
Yeah, I feel lucky. It was also really difficult too because a lot of people benefited coming up just after me right into the digital era, you know. I had to like transition where you know, you look at guys like Seth Morrison. I mean, half these kids nowadays probably don't even know who he is.
Right.
You know what I mean? And he was the
guy.
You know,
Yeah, he was the king.
He was the king, you know,
Yeah.
of like big mountain skiing essentially. And his skiing still stands up today to being some of the best ever. But
Oh, absolutely. Like you see Gaffney will post a clip every once in a while and you're like, I forgot how amazing that like Ski Movie 1 and 2 or whatever.
yeah, but it was those guys and a lot of photographers and stuff, same thing. As soon as film died and digital came in, they just, some transitioned well and some fell off, you know. And I did the transition, which took a bit of adjusting, I think, you know.
Do you think it helped because you were still quite young?
I think so, but it also made it tough because I had that mentality of the way it used to be, you know. So I still kind of like was, you know, in the like, you know, film a segment, get some photos, this and, you know, like where other guys maybe were like knew a little more. I've never been computer savvy either. I'm really bad with like digital stuff, so that doesn't help. But some guys, you know, came up and like understood the system better than me, I think,
right.
And were able to capitalize off of like Instagram and things like that.
And I guess it is like mindset, right? Because like you said, we'll go and we'll film a part and we'll take a bunch of photos and then we curate them. We make sure they're right, and then we send them to the magazines.
We'd hold off on things knowing that there was
Right.
that season where everything had to kind of
you let
out.
them sit and breathe, and then you can revisit them to make sure that they're right, and then you submit them to the appropriate outlets. Whereas now it's like, hey, we're gonna go up ski a couple laps of cat skinner. Oh, sick, that was dope. All right,
Yeah.
boom, boom, online.
YouTubers,
right?
Instagrammers, all that kind of thing. And I think when people that understood that first were able to like make a better career off that new.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I feel it's cool that I was able to like see everything in that analog era and be a part of like almost half my career was, you know, stuff that you can't even find on the internet really, you know, because
Right.
we were shooting, you know, 16 millimeter film.
Like the hoodie you've got on right now,
Yeah,
right? Heavy Hitting
exactly.
Volume 1. I had that VHS, and I'm kicking myself. I don't know where it is.
Yeah, I've still got mine.
Yeah, and I watched that over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
But that was like one of the first movies that made me want to do this and live this lifestyle.
Yeah.
But that was the same sort of thing. It was special.
Yeah, I feel like back then there was certain things like that for us that was like that shaped us. And nowadays it'd be hard to probably get a one answer out of someone what it is that shaped them, because every single day they have so much media floating by them.
Right.
That it's like,
That's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought about that because like I had, for me, it was that film. I had a 13 poster
yeah,
on the wall because I went to the premiere at the Alpenrock in like 2000 or 99. I think it was my first season there. Mm-hmm. And I pulled it off the wall and I had it. That's another thing that I think they're in the same place and I'm kicking myself enough either. But I had that 13 poster.
sick.
And we had that Heavy Hitting Volume 1
Yeah,
film.
same thing for me. I think I bought a ski guide that was friends with my dad. Was part of guiding a lot of those guys in movies, and he hooked me up with VHSs, and I got the Global Storming,
Right?
which was Matchstick's movie that came out the same year. And then Austin, my buddy Austin Ross, he bought the 13.
Yeah.
And then I think it was maybe the year after, I bought Royalty. I think all three of those movies are kind of what shaped the beginning of me wanting to ski, because I was snowboarding at that time too. And
Oh, yeah?
those movies were like what was like made skiing cool, you know,
Right.
to me. And yeah, kind of.
Did you watch any of the films like with your dad when you were younger as well?
For sure, yeah. No, for sure. I was like, I'd watch all the movies we had at the house.
Right.
But I was more of a skateboarder at the time, you know. That was like my biggest passion.
And that led towards like the snowboarding, right? You're like board sports. That
Yeah,
sort of
well,
thing?
after my dad passed, my mom took off and we moved to Maui, and like she surfed a lot, and I got into skating when I lived over there.
Mm-hmm.
So skiing wasn't really my thing. Didn't know how to ski until I was 10 when we moved back.
Oh, really?
That was just before all that stuff kicked off.
Right.
Yeah, so
Interesting. I didn't know that you had started late on skis.
yeah, a little bit.
Interesting. I didn't know that. That's cool. Another thing I did want to ask you about your dad, if you don't mind, but I was reading back to feet and heavy hitting. So I was reading in Mountain Life. He did an article with you recently. And just something that stuck out to me was you said, I think it's a quote, and I don't have it written down exactly, but I think it was that you said something to him like you were focused on not dying before 33. Because that's when your dad passed away, and you're 33 now.
Yeah, I'm 33, yeah.
And so, like, was that, like, explain that a little bit. Like, was that, obviously you're living your life and you're doing your things, but is it something that's always been in the background just to make sure I got to get to that point?
Yeah, I just, like, obviously, you always think about, like, I always thought about everything my dad did in his life, and I was, like, really, like, inspired by it, and kind of surprised, like, how much he could do at, such a young age. Kind of mind boggled by it, but I always was just, like, thought, like, I want to live past that, I want to see, like, see out that, what he never did see. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, no, I was, like... did
that ever, like affect decision-making or anything like that? Because if you look at your skiing and a lot of the stuff that you do...
I think in my early 20s, I was always trying to, like, not just because of him, but I was also a little bit, for sure, I was always trying to accomplish all this stuff to become, like, a good enough, like, mountaineer and a climber and a surfer and a skater and, like, a skier to, like, sort of match and find, like, that progression like he did.
Like, live up to the name.
Live up.
Right?
Not even the name, just, like, my own expectations, because... I was so, just looked up to him, Mm-hmm. So, as everyone does to, like, their ski idols and their dads,
right.
Generally. So, and then later on in, my later 20s and now early 30s, I kind of was like, shit, I don't want to, like, push too hard either, because I want to, like, I want to keep it going.
Right.
I want to do it for as long as I can,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Part of that was, like, I just thought, like, I had to see to 33 and,
right.
Like,
it's kind of like an underlying motivation on like what I'm doing with my life, and just I'm sure it isn't something that you're like, oh, what would my dad do in order to make a decision? But it's just thing that's always in the back of your mind, I guess.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And like you said in the article, and then just now, like you did so much, but like thinking about where you're at, you've done a lot as well. Right,
some different things.
Yeah, because you're not gonna fall in, like, everybody leads their own path.
Totally,
right?
And the times are different now, than they were in the 80s and the 90s.
Right, not as loose.
Yeah, not as loose, and the ski industry is different. The equipment's different. Mm-hmm. The mountains are different. Those guys showed up here, and no one had skied this stuff.
Yeah,
it was sort of like still like I wish I could if I could turn time back but bring our like product technology with me, that would be like the sickest thing ever. Because
just a time machine it.
Yeah, time machine, like take your Vocal Revolt 121s with you to the late 80s and show up in Whistler,
Yeah, and then ski the first descents on those, right?
Yeah, just not like way less people here, it was like
right
different time.
Yeah, well, you can still, like, the mountains are still the same.
They are. There's just way more people in them now than there was then. And for me, like, I love that discovery. It's like what we were just talking about with, like, sacred grounds and things like that. I'm still always motivated by pursuing these experiences of the unknown,
Right.
And for them, everything was unknown.
Right.
There was no sat phones or cell phones or inReaches or
right.
anything like that, Also no, like, 850 turboed snowmobiles that they were on their whatever their Ski-Doo Tundras, and it took them 4 days to get out into Brandywine.
Right. And the only way that people know that you're okay is if you show up at Cheetah's for a beer after, right?
Yeah, it was like the 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock rule. You show up and if you're a day late, start worrying, kind of thing. But yeah, so I don't know. That time is super inspiring because they were doing so much with what they had, and right. Still today, like, guys aren't skiing a lot of the stuff they skied. There's stuff that hasn't even been repeated.
Right.
So
just because they're like, oh, I'm gonna go to this one, or I'm gonna do that, or
Yeah,
for
conditions.
whatever.
And those
reason
guys
it
were
is.
also possessed by doing what they were doing, and really dedicated to it.
So now that like you are at that, you've passed that threshold, so you don't have that, that underlying kind of motivation or whatever or inspiration,
Yeah.
whatever it is you might call it. So where do you go from now? How does
I don't know.
the
I
switch
think
flipped?
it's also just getting older. I think you start like taking things as they come more, and I'm learning to do that as well. Is not like maybe not force things as much. I've always been like a bit of a craftsman, I would say, where I do this, and this to get to here.
Right.
Where an artist might be the person that like just bounces off this, and this to
Right.
end up wherever those things lead them to.
Yeah.
I've been the kind of person that's definitely like established the rigid path to make sure I get there.
Yeah, there's steps, right? There's
steps.
there's a plan, there's a map.
Which is good and bad, where I think nowadays I'm definitely learning to float and fluidly kind of find my way there, and what comes, goes, and you kind of
Be more open to like what the universe is going to bring into you rather than
exactly.
Did you think you fought that a little bit before?
For sure, yeah. I definitely have my whole life, and that's just my personality and who I am. And I don't think I would have accomplished the things I have accomplished if I wasn't that way either.
Yeah, a little bit of stubbornness does get you somewhere too, right? There's a
does,
lot of benefits to it, to being stubborn.
So there's that. But I think also like my mentality wasn't just like I don't want to die before 33. It was also just like I thought a lot up to that point, and I didn't really think beyond it too much.
Right, because it's just there, right? It's that thing like when you're a kid, you lose your dad, and you're trying to find your own way, right? And what's your point of reference? Unfortunately, that, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of how it just develops. I would
Totally.
assume.
Yeah, you just kind of I thought a lot about all the steps leading up to then, and like I say, now maybe I'm gonna be a little more fluid. And also as you get older, you realize like I'm 33, but I don't feel much different than I did when I was 23.
Right.
So like when I was, I'm still skiing the same things, in a lot of ways, and doing the same things. And now I've got friends that are, 10 years younger than me, and I don't feel like I'm 10 years older than them,
Right. Now
It's
you know
just-
how like the Matty Richards and all the crew that like
Yeah, and a
where
lot of
you're-
my friends are still 10 years older than me. So
Yeah.
it's I think you just learn that life's just, you get older, but your passions stay the same. And I've, have like rebirths in certain things that I maybe wasn't as interested in before.
Right.
So
It's in a ski town. I always say there's like that 20-year bubble, right? Everyone's here for the same reason, and then that 20 to like 40 kind of gap, everybody's body works the same. Everybody has the same kind of ideas and thoughts and goals,
yeah,
and like how they want to approach things and how they want to do things. And it's like it's really cool. And I love that now you've got these 10 years younger friends and skier buddies, because then I think now you're like, well, I had my mentors and my pals that were 10 years older that were
Yeah.
looking after me, and now you can kind of return the favor and
for sure. Yeah.
pass it forward, right?
I'm happy to do that. I feel like because of my stubbornness and stuff, maybe I didn't do that my whole life, I'm like, think back to when I was like, 14, 15, traveling around with like CR and Tanner, and they were in their early 20s and stuff, and I'm thinking, fuck, when I was in my early 20s, it definitely wasn't hanging out with 14-year-olds,
Yeah.
But I think that was just the industry was so small then too,
Right.
It was kind of like me, and then Sean and Callum came right after me, and a few others, but it was really just a few of us,
Because everybody you just mentioned started young,
yeah, really
right?
young.
So you guys had to figure out how to get by, and you just kind of gravitated towards each other because you have that common experience.
It was just really small too, the industry, and it was so small, like you knew everyone. Now it's way broader, like there's guys' names I've never heard of that are some of the biggest skiers in the planet. So
Right.
back then it was sort of natural. Nowadays, like on the mountain, all these young skiers, there's so many, and it's like pretty normal for a kid to grow up and be like, just you open your phone or whatever, and it's like it's normal to do a 360 off that cliff, or whatever. Right. And I think back then it was sort of like there were such few of us doing it that everything was more rare, and you would gravitate towards each other a lot, because
Right.
That's just how it was, I guess.
Right.
Now there's all these different sects in the industry, and people are specialized in certain things. I think back then too, we kind of did everything.
Right.
Because that's just how it was.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you can go to the park and throw down, and then you can also ski the gnarliest pillow line I've ever seen, and then perfectly ski a spine as if you're painting it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, put crampons on and hike up an icy couloir. We kind of
right.
I think did a bit of it all. Not everyone, but a lot of us did, And I think there is still people like that, obviously, but it's definitely I think the progressions got so high that like to get to be the best like park skier now, you can't go spend time in the backcountry.
You got to spend all your time in the park.
And you can't have a career park skiing and being a park slopestyle guy and then expect in your late 20s that you're just gonna like be like, all right, now I'm gonna become a backcountry guy. It's like,
it takes a little bit of time.
You're kind of 10 years.
I think to be honest with you, like with what you're saying, I think that was true for like the last 5 to 10 years. I think now it's starting to shift a little bit again.
Yeah.
Like, look at Colby Stevenson's this year. I don't know if you saw any of his parts.
I just follow him on Instagram, but he's ripping.
Yeah, like.
But
ripping.
Also, those guys, like, I don't know him, but I'm sure he grew up riding that stuff. Yeah. You know what I mean? Outside of the park.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm gonna go do this and go shred. When I'm not in training.
Exactly.
Right.
So it goes that way, but then there's also guys for sure that had to focus more on that, and
Right.
And I'm sure he's sacrificing some of the the competitive side of things to progress now in the backcountry.
Yeah.
Where back in the day, well, I mean, that happened to me too. I left the park thing early enough because I just, I was like, well, I could try really hard to get here, but I'm going to miss out on this if I do that. So
Right.
Certain point, you have to kind of, I think, focus on what you want to accomplish.
Yeah, exactly. So what do you feel like, knowing of all those changes, like we just had this great chat about, you were there and all the differences. So now that you're here, you've gotten beyond that, imaginary threshold, and you've done what you've done. Like, where do you think, let's just focus on this year. What do you think you want out of this year?
Well, I'm hoping it starts snowing in North America.
That'll be a good start. All right, we'll start with some snow.
But no, I just want to ski a lot and get really comfortable on my skis, and honestly still go ski some places that I haven't been to.
Yeah. Do you still have the desire to do these self kind of driven projects and that you've been done, or is this a year where you're gonna just be like, hey, you know what, Vocal, I want to go on a couple trips with you guys and then just go and ski?
Oh, for sure. And I've already been doing that. I want to just do a balance of all of it.
Yeah.
So Vocal's willing to support me on projects I want to do, and if they have a project they're working with someone on, I'm gonna be there.
Right.
So I kind of want to just do it as much as I can, really.
Just be open and available and ready to drop some cash on a flight and get out of town.
Honestly, yeah, I just want to be where I can ski the best possible terrain. That's really my motivation, is to like be in the right place to capitalize on skiing the best snow and the best terrain.
Right.
Which allows me to ski the best way I can, essentially.
Is there anybody, like we talked about, the movies and stuff that shaped us, and then we've also talked about, like, there's so many kids that you know or don't know. Is there anybody that kind of sticks out to you now that you're like, I like that, how that person skis, or like I kind of want to go, I want to ride with this person, and
Well, last night I watched Lucas Watch's movie.
Yeah, good, hey.
And Lucas is like, I've never skied with him, but he's definitely, it's probably my favorite American Pacific Northwest skier for sure that I can think of. Yeah. So yeah, I'm, he's super sick. So I like get inspired by guys like him, and I also get inspired by other sports still, like I always have,
Yeah.
And to stay psyched on skiing, I have to. And as you get older, I think you just want to keep learning, So I'm like really motivated to like progress in everywhere. I never stopped riding my skateboard. I never stopped like loving snowmobiling and being everywhere I could at the same time if I can. It's hard, but try to do a bit of everything too.
Yeah, and lots of fishing.
Lots of fly fishing.
I'm like watching you on Instagram the last like 3-4 years. You've really gone like head first.
Well, it's one of those sports where it's just like skiing or something where you have to commit.
Yeah.
You know? Or like I haven't been climbing as much as I was like say, in my 20s, but you couldn't not commit if you wanted to like go climb certain routes and
Right, you had to put in the time.
Yeah, if you want to go, catch permit or steelhead or whatever, you really gotta.
And just be technical with the, because I don't fish at all. So is it like just being technical with the fly, or just knowing
being technical with the fly, also understanding
where the fish are?
It's just like understanding animals and Mother Nature,
right?
Understanding the flows and the river. It's like when the snow melts on the mountain, what's it's gonna do here? It's each storm changes the way it's gonna. Like we were talking about earlier, like being around here a lot, you understand kind of the patterns of how things work, and
right.
It's just the same thing as understanding, tides in the ocean or levels and flows in the river and
how
where the fish are going to be.
Where the nutrients will be and where the fish will go.
Yeah, where they're going to stop, where they're migrating.
Right.
How they feed, or on, some of it, certain fishing is maybe more like on the flats where it's more just like technically being good enough to catch them.
Right.
And having eyes to find them.
That's cool because you've been doing a lot of like trips for it too, right? Like up north.
I try to, yeah. Up north is just an amazing place, and I've got some good friends up in the Skeena country. So yeah,
good to have some friends with the cabins. You don't have to drop five figures on like a lodge.
Yeah, no, I've never done that. I've had some good opportunities to visit some lodges now, but I've always done it a lot of hiking in rivers and
working for it, right?
Working for it, finding it, and I've got a truck camper, so when I was up there this year, I just stay in my truck.
Sweet.
So, works pretty good.
Right on, man. Well, it's been like I said, it was a while to get you back here, but it's good. I'm stoked to kind of see. Like I said, I've been in town. I'm like I got 10 years on you, and I've been in town 20, so I've been seeing you since you were a kid. Right, we've known each other here and there, so it's been kind of neat every time I'll run into you or I'll see what's going on with you. It's been cool to kind of see the evolution of you as like a person.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
As well as like the skiing, and like always been one of my favorite skiers, like hands down. And I think this new stage, I'm hoping to see kind of more. I want to see more of like, because this is how people consume stuff. I watch these films that you put out, and when's the next one's going to be out in the new year? You say?
Yeah, just early January.
And do you have a name for it yet?
Still kind of.
All right, figuring it out.
Working on the name. I got a few names, but yeah. And this one will be different than the past, like I kind of mentioned. But yeah, more kind of along the lines of what we just talked about. There's a bit of lifestyle involved in it,
right?
And a lot of skiing places that aren't the far off unknown destinations. There's some.
You're throwing a Spanky's Ladder diamond ball line?
There's some footage in Spanky's, yeah.
For real?
Yeah. There's footage in Blackcomb Terrain Park. There's footage from Spanky's. There's footage from, some more backcountry heli sled access stuff, but not a lot, to be honest. It's a lot of, there's footage from, some local rivers. There's footage from the local skate park.
Yeah.
Footage from the local ski hill. So it's a little more.
It's almost like Magnetic was. I
guess so. Yeah, it's just it's kind of back to my roots. I guess.
Yes, that's what I mean. Like it wasn't like that, like Magnetic, or like that segment in was it All I Can that the Sherpas did, and they had everybody line up in Spanky's that one day, and we all shredded it.
Was that All I Can or Into the Mind?
Into the Mind, one of the two.
Into the Mind, maybe.
Yeah, I always love the Whistler Blackcomb kind of focus stuff, so I'm pumped on that.
Yeah, it's like sacred places to me that aren't the far out, untrodden, untapped sacred zones.
That's sweet. So everybody that's listening to this, like, or watching on YouTube, go and watch your Kye's Sacred Ground series, because it's awesome. Like it rivals anything that's out there. For if you're a big mountain skier, you like people skiing, good lines, there's good tunes in there as well.
Thanks.
I totally forget. Every year I always watch a bunch of movies, and I'm always shazamming the crap out of them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, this is a good tune. This is a good tune.
Yeah, we try to find music that's not necessarily super well known, but still good
right
music,
and it's also affordable that way too, right?
Yeah, it's hard to find good music, and it's nice when people are like, oh, what song is that, not like they know it. So
that's the kind of music I listen to. I've never been a radio guy. Like I like music that nobody else knows about or like hears. I'm like, have you heard this? Or like, what the hell are you listening to? I'm like,
yeah, for sure.
So when that's this time of year is those kind of tunes are usually less popular, which means they're more accessible to be able to pay to afford to get into a film, which I'm a big fan of. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, like skiing's awesome.
Thanks, dude.
The cinematography is always good. The storyline's cool. Did you write all the narration or like the story for it?
Austin, who narrated it, did some of the editing and narrating editing to the narration. Riley Lebo has helped
With the writing
a bit too.
I'm glad I didn't forget that, because I was thinking about that earlier.
I helped writing it. Some of it in the earlier ones I didn't write all of it, but the last couple for sure. Yeah.
So the question I didn't even have in my brain is, we talked about like writing your captions and whatnot. Like we covered that, and then with the narration here, have you ever done any writing?
For myself, a lot, yeah. Most of the stuff I'm motivated to write about is not like, I guess, stuff that is like
that you'd want to share.
That I'd share all the time, because I just write stuff to kind of help myself.
Yeah, but journaling, that sort of stuff. But without, do you have a journal or like a diary?
No, I'm not actually a big journaler, as much as I probably should be. But sometimes writing just helps me. You know, I'll write like
clarify your thoughts and get things out. You know, it's like a brain dump, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe that's something you could think about, because you know, I noticed it with your posts. I noticed it with the film and the narration, and I was like, I'd read stuff. If you ever had a
Thanks. Yeah, no, I'm sure. Like, and I have done a bit of writing. I was talking to Feet Banks about it recently. Like, I wrote something he was stoked on, I think. But yeah, I was like, for me, I just don't want to. I could never see myself being like a journalist. You know, writing about stuff that was given to me. Like, write about this. Like, I can't write about that. I have to write about something that I'm like passionate about at the time or something. So
and
it's hard.
Maybe something that, like, you know, that brain dump or something that you like. You're like, this is actually kind of neat, and then submit it somewhere. And if
they want to write it, and if they edit it too much, I'm like, no, sorry.
Or if you even feel like sharing it too, right? You know
exactly.
Like, maybe it's just for you.
Yeah, most of it is, I think. But we'll see if I get the opportunities. I'm happy to, you know, share some of and write some stuff.
Sweet. Well, thanks for coming, man. People can find you at Kye Petersen.
Yeah.
Instagram stuff. I want to see some of what you do a little bit more on. Like, even though we talked about the changes, I still want to see more of your shit on Instagram, because it's fun.
I'm trying. I'm learning and getting better, I think, and hopefully this year, I'm gonna have, you know, be filming more and sharing more and keep doing the same thing I've been doing, but try to get better. I'm still like, I'm not over it. I'm pretty motivated on just continuing what I've done, and
that's sweet. And you're right in the prime, I think. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, physically, you're still, as humans at that age, you're still strong and like really, really good. And now your brain is actually developed to a point now where that's also like matured to a point where you can make those decisions. Like, I honestly think in my life, 33, 34 was like the best version of me.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that at 23, and I still think it at 33. So we'll see. I'm just excited to keep going, and like I said, my motivation just comes from like being there when at the right time, when it's good, when it snows, and like the best days of my life are POW days on the ski hill, really, you know. So I don't want to miss any of that. And then if there's like good sunny windows and opportunities to go ski big spines and shit, I'm like, yeah, I just want to be at the right place at the right time where I can ski the best stuff I can find. So yeah, that's what keeps me stoked.
Awesome. Thanks, dude.
No worries, buddy.
You've been listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers. This has been a Redmark Media production.